Hey, good Sam. This is Pastor Bud with your 90-second reset for the first day after Easter. This whole week, we're going to be looking at different encounters with the risen Jesus, where people found life in the midst of maybe hopeless moments, maybe in the midst of despair, maybe in the midst of discouraging moments, but they found life in Christ. The first one that we're going to talk about is found in John chapter 20, verse 11. And it's where Mary Magdalene encounters Jesus in the garden. And Jesus says, "Why are you weeping?" He encounters her in the midst of her grief, in the midst of her anguish, in the midst of her sorrow. And Jesus shows up. And Jesus is present. And Jesus makes it known that he's going to show up for that. You know, he doesn't have to show up in the midst of grief. He can let us grieve. He can let time do its thing. But actually, he showed up because he wanted to give hope. He wanted to give care. He wanted to give concern to Mary Magdalene. Where does Jesus show up in the midst of your grief? Where does Jesus show up in the midst of your sorrow? Where has Jesus shown up in the past and will continue to show up? Because we know Jesus shows up. In the midst of the Gospels, we see him showing up when Lazarus passes and Mary and Martha are there. You see this over and over and over again. In the midst of deep grief, Jesus shows up and brings hope and brings comfort to them. I pray that this week you find hope and comfort in the midst of your grief.